Linux uses a simple permissions mechanism to ensure proper user access to files and directories. We can see these permissions using ls with a long listing. The permissions are shown in the first column. There are 10 fields shown and are broken into 4 blocks. The first character indicates the type of the item. In the listing here, you can see that directories start with a D, symbolic links start with an L. Normal files don't have an indicating character, so a dash is displayed as a placeholder. Each of the next three blocks are indicated by 3 characters each. The first block of characters is the permissions for the owner of the file or directory. The owner is shown in the third output column. The second permission block is for users of the same group as the one associated with the file. This group is shown in the fourth output column. The final permission block is for all other users and is often referred to as world permissions. For each group, the 3 characters represent read, write, and execute permissions. For example, the file hello.txt is owned by Bob and has a group Bob. As we discussed in a previous video, even though they have the same name, they are different things. In this case, the owner can read and write the file, but can't execute it. This is normal since it is just a text file. The group has the same permissions, but the world only has read access, meaning they can't modify the file. I do want to point out that it may seem odd to execute a directory, but that is actually a very important permission. The execute permission for a directory determines if the user can execute a command in that directory. For example, if you don't have execute permissions for a directory, you can't execute the ls command to see the files in the directory. The only exception to these permissions is that an administrator such as root can access any file on the file system. If you want to change the permissions of a file or directory, use the chmod command. As we can see in the man page, there are 2 ways to specify new permissions. The first is symbolic mode, and the second is octal mode. Let's first look at the symbolic mode first. As we can see here in the man page, we first specify the user, then an operator indicating the type of change, and lastly the permission itself. We can specify the appropriate user U by indicating the owner, G indicating users in the file's group, O indicating other users, or A for everyone. For the operators, we can specify a plus sign for adding permissions, a minus sign for removing permissions, or an equal sign for adding permissions and removing other permissions. The most commonly used permissions are the same read, write, and execute that we saw when we used ls. There are other options, but we can read more about those later. Let's look at an example. First, let's change the permissions on hello.txt by removing group write permissions. We can do that with the following command. Notice that group does not have write permissions anymore. We decide later that we want only the owner to be able to read the file. There are a number of ways to do this, but I'll use the equals operator here as an example. What this command does is it changes the permissions for all users to no permissions, and then adds read permissions for the user or owner of the file. Symbolic mode might seem easier, but in my opinion, remembering all the different characters and combinations can be problematic. Octal mode requires that you know how to count an octal, but once you know how, it becomes very easy to use. With that in mind, here's a quick overview of the octal numbering system. If you start with binary numbers, octal is straightforward. The individual positions are each associated with a binary value. The execute permission is associated with 2 to the 0 and has a value of 1. The write permission is associated with 2 to the 1 and has a value of 2. Lastly, the read permission is associated with 2 to the 2 and has a value of 4. If we look at an example for setting both read and write permissions, we get a 4 from the read permission and a 2 from the write permission. Their sum is 6, which is the value that will be used in the chmod command. If instead we wanted to specify read and execute permissions, we sum the read and execute values to get a total of 5. Lastly, if we want all permissions, we sum 4, 2, and 1 to get a total of 7. I do want to mention one quick point. You will often see octal numbers preceded by a 0. This is common and indicates that the number is octal and not decimal. I have omitted it here as the command can use either form, and I didn't want to overcomplicate things. However, using a leading 0 is technically correct, the best kind of correct. Now that you have an idea of how octal works, let's apply it to permissions. Instead of changing individual permissions, as in symbolic mode, we specify all the permissions for the file or directory at once. For example, if I want the owner and group to have read-write permissions, and everyone else just to have read permissions, I would use the following command. Remember that read and write are 4 and 2 in octal respectively, and they sum to be 6. Thus, the owner and group permissions have the value 6, and all other users have the permissions value of 4. While octal can be simpler to remember, there are situations where symbolic mode is more useful. They primarily occur when you want to modify some of the special permission attributes. You can read about those in the chmod man page. If you ever need to change the owner and group of a file or directory, the process is straightforward. To change the owner, use the chown command. All we need to do is specify the user and then the file or directory to modify. For example, if I wanted to give ownership of the file hello.txt to Sally, I would use this command. Notice that I needed root permissions to do that. We could have used the chown command to change the group at the same time if we wanted to. However, we can also use the chgroup command. Here, we change the group ownership of the file to the group Sally. I find that I use these commands primarily when I extract files from an archive, or have to move software from a home directory to opt so all users have access.